Kia ora, everybody, welcome. So this is the Sail into Summer Reading webinar, and you will have joined in listen-only mode. So what that means is you can use the chat button at the bottom of the screen. Just do check the drop-down on the chat. You have the option of chatting to all attendees or just panelists. So we recommend chatting to all attendees. That way you'll just be communicating with everyone and sharing all of your thoughts. There is a Q&A button. So that is where you will post questions you have for the presenters. And what we're going to do is we're going to save the questions for the end. So feel free to pop your questions in there throughout the session. And at the end, we'll have time to go through them all. And if you do need any help with anything technical, you can use the little raise hand icon. Or if you get kicked out or something, you can email me and I'll try and help you. If you do need to leave, you just click the leave meeting button. And if you accidentally leave or get kicked out, just use that same link to join us. So that's all for me. That is housekeeping done. And I'm going to pass over to Anne. And yeah, enjoy.
Thank you very much, Nicole. And yeah, that was Nicole, our technical guru. So if you've got any problems, just let her know. But tēnā koutou kua hui hui mai nei, welcome along and thank you very much for taking the time to come along to our summer reading webinar. We know everybody's busy out there, and a special mention to those who are preparing for the return of students and whatever that might look like for you. As it says under my photo, my name is Anne Dixon. I'm a facilitator based in Auckland, although presently that's my spare room at Snells Beach. And I'm joined by my fellow facilitators, Amanda Bond, also from Tamaki Makaurau, Kathy Kennedy from Otatahi, Christchurch, and Jeannie Skinner up from a hopefully sunny Kerikeri. Now I'd like to start us off today with a karakia. So, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. I aki ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, te he Māori ora. Now, obviously, as Nicole said, we're recording this session and we'll be sending out that link and other notes and links mentioned, hopefully later this week. And a lot of the information is also going to be put into the Summer Reading Success Padlet that we mentioned to you in your registration confirmation. So don't feel like you frantically have to take notes. But here are some of the things that we're going to be taking turns at sharing with you today. No point in me reading off the slide because that's something that none of us need because we're all good readers. So please enjoy, ask questions, add to the chat so that we can capture your great ideas, as well as any concerns that you have that we may be able to help you with either in the Q&A later on or one-on-one. We can get your local facilitator to get in touch with you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and hand over to Jeannie to kick us off. Welcome along, Jeannie.
Kia ora, Anne, and everybody. Thank you. Just sharing my screen, and we'll get underway. Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. Kia ora, everybody, and thank you for joining. Even though you're coming to the end of a busy year and a challenging year, here you are making time to think about keeping students reading. So I think you're all heroes for that. Sail into Summer Reading. This is the bright and breezy brand that we created at National Library a few years ago for our summer reading offer. And I mention it here just in case it's something you want to think about for your school's summer reading messaging. If you don't already have a brand or a motif or a logo or a slogan, it might be something you want to think about. And here's an aphorism from Mason Cooley, a US professor. Reading gives us some place to go when we have to stay where we are. And if there's ever been a time where we've had to stay where we are, it's been this last year or two. So all aboard and off we go. I'm going to start with a quick outline of what summer reading loss is and why it matters, but I'll keep this really brief because I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with the concept already. What might come as a surprise is how many parents and students themselves are unaware of summer reading loss and how damaging the effects of that loss can be, and how simple the remedy can be. So we need to do what we can to spread the message, and hopefully this will give you some points that you can share with the people you work with. Simply put, students make reading progress all through the school year, but during the school holidays and the long summer holidays especially, if they don't maintain the reading habit, they lose ground. And this reading loss is significant, or can be significant. One study done, a New Zealand study done, found that some students in a low decile Auckland school lost 5.8 months of reading progress over the summer holidays. So it's almost half a year. And it's, it's a terrible effect on their academic school life. It's often the students that can least afford to lose their reading gains that they've achieved during the school year who fall furthest behind. The lack of reading practice can happen over every holiday break, but the biggest effect is actually over the 6 or 7 weeks of the summer. Secondly, there's a really strong correlation with socioeconomic status. Students from a lower socioeconomic background keep pace with their more advantaged classmates during the school year, but during the summer, low-income children often have fewer summer learning opportunities and less access to resources, and so they tend to fall further behind than their classmates. Studies in the US found that middle-income students generally lost about 1 month of reading achievement, and the lower income students generally lost about 2 months of reading achievement. The third point is that these losses are cumulative and long lasting. So the summer learning gap between high and low socioeconomic status students that starts in primary school has a powerful influence on reading scores right through high school and beyond. So it's something that makes a big difference right through. And the last point is that it's urgent. It's so much harder to close the gap once it's opened. So the earlier the intervention, the better. We need to make summer reading something that happens for junior students and continues right on up the school from there. So if you're talking to people about why summer reading matters, these 4 simple bullet points could be the gist of what you say. It's significant, it has a bigger impact on lower socioeconomic communities, it's cumulative and long lasting, and it's urgent. That might be the quick snapshot view, but you'll find a lot of content on our Services to Schools website about summer reading, including a specific page about what the research tells us, and that's New Zealand and international research. So this could be a useful starting point to read more about it yourself, or refer others to it if you're needing to build a case. So just look under the reading engagement tab on our homepage, and then come down to the summer reading menu on the right. And this sort of background reading is all part of taking an evidence-based practice approach. So knowing what the research tells us, the big picture, knowing your own school situation, and that's going to inform your decision-making and practice. And Kathy's going to be covering this coming up next. Finally, I just wanted to emphasize that what we're actually talking about here very much is about reading for pleasure. So it's actually about helping students experience the delights of losing oneself in a story, getting into the flow, being transported to imaginative new worlds and possibilities, finding comfort and reassurance, avoiding boredom, having surprises and discoveries, spending time enjoying books. And it might be fiction or non-fiction and graphic novels or picture books or something silly or something serious. But reading for pleasure means allowing students to choose what they want to read, and there's absolutely no work attached, no book reviews or anything. So I have to say also that promoting summer reading to avid, confident readers isn't the hardest thing. And even providing the books to go home isn't either. The real challenge is encouraging reluctant readers to keep reading over the holidays at home, setting them up for success maybe in a home where reading for pleasure really isn't a focus, isn't something they do. So this webinar will hopefully give you some ideas about what you in the school, be it library or classroom, can do to support families and whānau to keep reading for pleasure happening, especially for those reluctant readers. No pressure, but Paul Jennings has said that a reluctant reader is one for whom an adult has not yet found a good enough book. So the challenge is on us. So pleasure first, but of course, summer reading initiatives are also about student achievement and avoiding that loss. We want families to know that the antidote for summer reading loss is simply reading for 10 to 15 minutes a day. And that could be 3 lots of 5 minutes, short and sweet, at breakfast and at bedtime, or as few as 5 to 6 chapter books over the summer. And what I'm suggesting is that we don't want to promote summer reading programs to students and families as something to do because it's good for you. So as Mem Fox says about reading with children, I don't want it to be, I don't want it to sound like medicine. I want it to sound like chocolate. So let's emphasize the keeping it fun, little and often and easy, little, often and easy. And finally, today's webinar is about taking a strategic approach to summer reading in your school, getting something up and running and being purposeful. So I'm going to hand over to Kathy now, who'll talk about planning and collaboration for maximum reach and impact. Over to you, Kathy.
Thanks, Jeannie. That's fantastic. Kia ora, everyone. I'm Kathy Kennedy, and I'm one of the facilitators in Christchurch. So I'm actually coming to you today from my spare bedroom. But the photo behind me is the beautiful Nightstream School Library, which is one of the new school builds in Christchurch quite recently. So I'll just bring up a lovely slide deck for you. Okay, so as Jeannie mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about planning your summer reading program. It sounds obvious that you need to plan it, but what we're actually talking about is taking a step back and taking a mindful and strategic approach. So the summer reading program that you initiate in your school really has the outcomes that are best for your students. And in terms of the best program for your school, I also want to just make sure you understand that what you do as a summer reading initiative can be big or small. So we're not talking about something with all the bells and whistles and the razzle dazzle. So because sometimes you can sit back and go, well, I can't do that. I haven't got time to do that. So a summer reading initiative could be as small as just lending books over the summer period, if that's something your school hasn't done before, or promoting that borrowing over the summer period. It could be something as simple as opening your library for a couple of afternoons on the last week of term and inviting parents in to come and load up with books to read over the summer. Or it could be all of that and more, with events and competitions and, as I said, all the bells and whistles. So it's really important that every time you hear us say summer reading initiative, it can be really small and very simple, but just something that really suits your school. So how do you take that mindful and strategic approach? So we've got 6 steps that you can work through to make that happen. And in fact, these 6 steps you can apply to any planning for a new program or service in your library. They will work and they will make sure that what you're actually doing is within your capacity and has got the outcomes that you wanted. So first of all, gather your team, establish your outcomes, design your program, promote and communicate, actually implement it, and then reflect, review and report. And the arrow there is there for a purpose, because this process isn't always linear. Sometimes you will go up and down through this process. You might hear of a good idea and then you need to reverse engineer it and measure that idea against some goals or outcomes for your school, and then talk to your team that's going to implement it. So you'll go up and down through this process. But whether your summer reading initiative is big or small, then this is the process that you need to go through. Now, before I unpack those, I'm just going to have a word about what you can find on our website. So everything I'm talking about today, as Jeannie said for the research, is on our website. There's a lot more detail there. So don't panic if you feel like you might miss something, or there's a lot of information coming to you in this hour, or you have to go and answer the doorbell. We've got places where you can go back and read things that have piqued your interest. So we'll send those links to you in all the follow-up notes. Okay, so let's have a look at those 6 steps. Gather your team first. Now, this could be a team of you plus a student plus a teacher, someone from senior leadership or a parent, it doesn't really matter who it might be, but it will depend on what your initiative is. It won't include all of those people, but it might include some of them. Now, obviously, the reality is that you might be a team of one, and that's okay too. But your goal, hopefully, will be that if you do something small and simple as a summer reading initiative 1 year, you might be able to build on that next year and invite another member into your summer reading team who might be a teacher, for example. This shared responsibility just means there's a few more creative heads in the mix. It means that you can share tasks and not one person is carrying the load. It also means you can network better and engage with all the parts of your school community. And that will mean that the possibility of long-term sustainability for your program is much higher. We want the program to become a service that you offer regularly from your library, or as just a normal part of your school calendar that's really embedded in your program. So once you've got your team together, it's time to really stop and think about the why. And Jeannie's covered a lot of that why area for you already. And we call this evidence-based practice. So the first part of evidence-based practice is evidence for practice. And this is when you go outwardly looking for the research, you go out looking for best practice. And the fact that you're in this webinar today, you are actively involved in that process right now. You're finding out what's going on out there. Then we've got evidence in practice, and this is where you start to look a little bit more inwardly at what's happening in your own school or in your own library. It might be what's happening in parts of the school or what's not happening. We've actually got a lovely little quiz, which I've got a screenshot there for you, that we'll provide to you in the follow-up notes. But it's got 8 very gentle questions to ask your staff about where they are at in terms of summer reading. You can do this together as a whole staff. And what it will do is show you which areas you can develop some summer reading practices in. And the last one is evidence of practice. And this is where you're starting to look at the results or the impact of something you've initiated or implemented. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we look at the review and report phase. So on our website, we've got quite detailed pages about how you use evidence-based practice in your library, and we'll make sure those links go out to you. Now, when you do sit down with your team or brainstorm as a team of one, remember your outcomes and your goals are going to revolve around reading for pleasure, because that's what summer reading really is all about. So think about those things that you know that are the positive outcomes of reading for pleasure, and make sure they are encompassed in any goals or outcomes that you write down in your list. The other thing is your goals and your outcomes for summer reading will actually contribute to a school-wide culture of reading or a community of readers. Now, this beautiful diagram is showing you the engaged reader at the heart, and then all the elements that go into creating a community of reading. Now, a summer reading initiative can actually touch on all of those parts of that diagram, or you might just choose one. So this can also help inform all your outcomes and your goals that are intended for your summer reading program. And so lastly, about outcomes, having that strong evidence and those absolutely clearly defined goals and targets will help you in many ways. First of all, you'll be able to state your case if you need to ask for extra budget or extra funding or extra staffing or extra time. It will enable you to meet challenges or pushback with confidence and clarity. You might come up against comments like, oh gosh, we're going to lose all our books. But if you have at hand the why for your summer reading program and you can articulate the why, that will actually counteract any loss of a few books. So better to lose a book than lose a reader. Your outcomes will also show who you are actually targeting for your summer reading program. It might be a student cohort, it might be a year level, a group of priority learners. You could be targeting teachers, you could be targeting parent messages, but your outcomes that you've defined for your program will actually state who you're actually targeting. Outcomes will also make sure the implementation of the program stays focused and you don't spend time and energy in a place where you're not actually achieving what your goal is. It will also enable you to have your radar out and collect evidence along the way to see if your initiative is working. If you've got your target in mind or your outcomes in mind, you'll be ready to collect that photo or capture that piece of little piece of screenshot from someone or a little sound bite from someone along the way, and all that is telling you how you'll know that your summer reading initiative is actually working. So keep your outcomes manageable but also measurable. All right, so we've got our team together, we've got our list of outcomes, boom, we're ready to actually get down to the nitty-gritty and decide what we're actually going to do. This is the how we're going to do it, what do we need, who's going to do what, and when is all this going to happen. Now, very shortly, Anne is going to come in and give you lots of great ideas for this part of your planning. But before we move into that, I just want you to stop and think of a couple of things at this stage. First of all, think about your school-wide calendar. This can work for you or against you. So a lot happens in the last term, the last part of term 4. So check what's going on. You don't want to create some event in your library that's going to clash with something else. However, if there is something happening, and I know not quite so much is happening at the moment in these slightly restricted times, but if parents are coming in for an event or if there is a sports day, you can actually piggyback on that and be out there handing out flyers or out there with a table of books. So have a look at what's going on in the rest of the school. Make sure you design your program that stays within your capacity, your time and energy, and the resources that you've got. Keep your outcomes top of mind when you're planning your initiative. Take some time in your team or in your brainstorming of one to think about the challenges and the risks and the barriers. Now, this isn't negative thinking. This is just mitigating some risks and problem solving some potential challenges that might come up along the way. And the last one, and this is the most important one, is to keep whatever initiative you put in place fun and make it easy. We don't want to put up barriers for students or make them jump through hoops to get those books home. It needs to be super easy for them, and the fun factor needs to be really high. So once you've got your program and you know what you're going to do, it's time to tell the whole world and let everybody know. Get some great branding going. As Jeannie mentioned right at the top, you're welcome to use our National Library branding. Create some flyers and posters or signage. You might not be putting something on the main street on a billboard, but what about a sign at the school gate? There's lots of free branding out there. There's a couple I've just pulled down from ClipArt Max, ready to go and free to use. So then think about not just your library website or your library online, but go right to the school website, get something on the front of that, talk to the person who's in charge of that. School newsletter, your school Facebook or social media, make sure you use all of those channels. And of course, face-to-face if you can. Go and talk to the staff at staff meetings and visit any parent meetings that might be happening in your school. So once you've got the message out there, it's time for action. So this is the implementation phase and time to get those books out the door and get those books in children's hands. And Jean's going to actually tell a bit short about how you get the books and get those books in children's hands. And then finally, when the dust is all settled and summer is over and we're all back in term 1, it's time to reflect, review and report on your summer reading initiative. And you still go through this process even if you've done something very small and simple. So first of all, gather all your data, gather those photos. You might have done a survey or you might want to do a survey. You might have quotes or stories. Gather all that together. Meet with your team again and talk about, did you achieve your outcomes? Were there unexpected outcomes? What were the challenges? And then begin to think about what you will plan for next year or next holidays, because this summer reading initiative could turn into a holiday reading initiative and something you do at the end of every term. Then, of course, it's time to share all the good news with your school community. So again, go to all those communication channels and put some lovely stories into your school Facebook page or on the school newsletter about all the wonderful summer reading that took place. And lastly, report back to your principal and your board of trustees. This is really important because they will be really interested to know of a program that's actually got the outcomes of promoting literacy and the love of reading in your school. We've actually got a really great little template that you can use, and we'll make sure we provide that to you in the follow-up. And it's just got a set of headings and a few prompts to help you write that report. It doesn't have to be huge, it can be quite short. It can include a few photos about what happened, but it's really important to report that to your senior leadership team or all the way to your board of trustees. So there you have it. There are the 6 steps to make sure you have a successful summer reading program, and the summer reading program that's right for your school, because this is actually what success looks like. This is what we want to see on our beaches this summer, all those children out there with a book, and don't mind the sand in books. We certainly don't mind the sand in our books. So now we've looked at how to plan your program, I'm going to hand over to Anne, and she's going to give you lots of ideas of what other schools have done and how you could actually implement something. Thanks, Anne.
Thank you, Kathy. That was awesome. And I am going to go straight into my screenshot. So I'm here for that mixed bag of ideas and inspiration session, with a couple of examples of what other schools have done in the past, and plus some quick tips and ideas to think about. Now, as Kathy said, it doesn't have to be big. You can take one idea out of this or several to share with the whole school, just with your syndicate, just with your class in the library, or just some information in the newsletter home to parents, because it all helps. And because it's been a really long year, there's absolutely no expectation that you should be doing everything. In fact, you may even decide that you and the other staff don't have the energy to do anything. And that's okay, because you should pay attention then to what Jeannie and Amanda have to say in their kōrero coming up, and some of the other options that are available, such as simply promoting what the local public library is offering, because they will be offering something. We asked around at the Leanza conference last week, and there's a real mix of online and face-to-face programs happening. You aren't and don't have to be the only one encouraging summer reading. Now, before we start, just to use this webinar as a jumping off point, there are a couple of places that we recommended first, and Jeannie and Kathy have already mentioned the Services to Schools website, as well as the research links and planning guidance. There's also some case studies and a lot of ideas there. The other place you can go for ideas and information is the Padlet that we've set up for summer reading success, ideas and inspiration. Thank you, Amanda, for setting that up. And thank you to everybody that's already contributed. There's a lot of great ideas there already. So if you've worked on you've got something that's worked really well for you in the past, even if it's as small as the sort of reminder you put in the school newsletter, please add it to the Padlet. You've got the link in the invitation to the webinar, and we will also be sending that out with the follow-up notes. And that way it can be your one-stop shop for summer and holidays to come. Now, the key to reading for pleasure, as we all know, and making it fun, is that the students don't have to do anything with the book that they've just read, unless they want to, and there will be some that do. It's just about them and the story. The other thing is that everybody is an individual. Now, some kids like or need a plan. They're the ones that you need to give a reading log to so that they can record their reading, or challenge with a target, or reading outside of their comfort zone. There's lots of different ways you can do that. Then there are the children that will just sit quietly and get on with reading regardless of where and when. This was what I looked like trying to ruin my eyes under the covers at night. Send these students home with lots of books or ideas on what to read and where they can find them. Make sure they have access to a diverse range so they have lots of choice. And Jeannie's going to be covering off some of that a little bit later. Then there's the reluctant readers. Some of these kids you have to trick into reading. And we've got loads of ideas how to get kids reading and not even realise there are. One of my favourites is board games, which include a wide range of literacy. And when that competitive streak takes over, even reluctant readers don't realise what is happening. Another tip I heard the other day was turn the subtitles on your TV. They are really hard not to see. The whole question of rewards is a bit of a fraught one. Reading may be its own reward, but incentives do help. However, the cost can put some people off even trying to run a school holiday campaign or activity. Just remember that sometimes the best incentive is an acknowledgement or a celebration, a certificate, your time, or a special assembly. And Jeannie's already mentioned that we let them read what they want to read. Up, down, it's their choice. Also let them read when, where, and how they want, because not everybody is a sit-still kind of person. Let them read late into the night on special occasions. It's all very cool and it will help make it fun. Now, here's a couple of case studies that we've got on our website, and this is just a snapshot. One is Ahipara School, who did our original Sail into Reading workshops, and this was a whole school initiative, and these are all the different things that they did. But a couple of things that I thought were really interesting was they opened the school library during the summer holidays at the same time as the swimming pool. And although it was for the whole school, they actually put together specific book bags for targeted students with, you know, just the right sort of books and some extra activity sheets. And I loved that they had the display for their summer reading, not in the library or as well as in the library. They also had it in the foyer. So every visitor that came into school could see that they had reading front and centre and wanted to know about it. Mahurangi College, maybe just down the road from me, took that book brand message from our Sail into Reading summer reading workshops and take a break, take a book break. That was their brand, not just for summer, but for every holiday. Now, a couple of the things that they did really well was they peppered their daily notices and their signage both in the library and around the school with that book break message. They also told everybody why. And an analogy I really like was we all know that we remember the passwords when we use them every day. But if we haven't used a password for something for a long time, we forget what it is. I know this happens to me all the time. And that's a really good analogy to use to make sense. They also sent lots of information home to parents about summer reading and enabling their students to borrow books over summer. And this wasn't so much a permission slip as just a way to promote it to parents. They also did a piece for the local newspaper. So it wasn't just about them doing it in their school community, it was about the whole community knowing about the importance of summer reading. Here's that mixed bag that I was talking about. A few ideas just to get you started. Get Caught Reading. Now, some of the photos today have come from the Get Caught Reading Challenge up at Ahipara School. You may have noticed that there was a bit of a rural flavour to it. And if you do this, you also get a great supply of photos to use for displays and newsletters during 2022. We all know that the best person to recommend a book to a kid is another kid. So get the students to choose books for each other. Everyone in class can draw a name out of their hat to choose for, and don't forget to include yourself. Or you could do a lucky dip. As it's Christmas, wrap up some books in Christmas paper and put them in a couple of lucky dip bins and get students to pull out books. Now, if they do come from your collection, you might need to add a message inside that wrapping paper so that they come back. But you might also have some good quality donations, weeded books or Duffy books that you can use. Competitions and challenges are always popular, and they can be as simple as how many books can you read? How many pages can you read? Can you read more than your teachers over summer? Or can you read your heightened books, which is something that I think I tried to do last summer? Use thermometers or maps to measure achievement, have a wall of fame or an awards ceremony to celebrate when you get back to school. We've already touched on the fact that you have to sometimes hide the reading, and you can put that into an activity. That can be something like reading a map and the road signs on a family trip, working on the basis that we are going to be able to travel this summer. We've also mentioned board games, but there are things like following a recipe, learning how to knit, making a kite, creating the clues for a scavenger hunt for family and friends. If there's something else that you've done or that you can think of, please add them to the chat now and we can put them in the Padlet, or you can put them straight into the Padlet yourself. And don't forget to have some fun yourself. Role model the silly. After all, it is that time of year. I saw lots of great stuff on social media and in school newsletters over the last couple of years when people have been in lockdown. Or you might simply want to put your feet up and order in some relaxing reading for yourself. Now, there are lots of really cool places where you can go to get more information and more ideas. One of the ones that we wanted to mention is, of course, your School Library Association of New Zealand, Aotearoa. They've got some resources on their website, and in one of their collected magazines, they dedicated the whole issue to summer reading. There's also other summer reading specialists, or just plain reading specialists, and that's people like our favourite Donalyn Miller, but it's also things like the Reading Rockets and Scholastic websites, and some Reading for Pleasure communities, websites, organisation and groups on social media that always have lots of tips going. And of course, mentioning social media, if you go onto something like Pinterest, they're a great repository of tips and downloadables for sending activity sheets home or creating a reading challenge for the students. Summer reading can be as simple or as complex as you want to make it. Don't forget the teachers. What is your school's reading culture and expectations around teachers as readers? Is everybody encouraged to take home an armful of books from the school library? Or are just some teachers keen readers and others not? Or are you in a school where end of term and you're out of there? Imagine what could happen at your school if your answer was the first one. So some of the tips for getting teachers to read the odd picture book or children's novel along with their beach romance or boating magazine is to put together a selection of books for all the teachers to take home over summer. Take them to them rather than waiting for them to come to you. You could have a staff reading challenge, or you could talk about starting up a staff book club for next year so that it can be something that's ongoing. Have a book talk slot at each staff meeting and take the books to the staff room so that they're there for people to browse, especially those hot off the press ones, rather than waiting for them to come to you. Those are just a few ideas, and I'm going to stop sharing now and hand back to Jeannie, who's going to talk a little bit more about how to get those books into everybody's hands. Jeannie. Jeannie, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm just unmuting and sharing my video. I just need to bring this up bigger so that I can, can't share my video. Hang on a second, start video. There we are. Sorry, I'm a bit new at this, so getting the hang of it all. Thanks, Anne. No doubt you've heard the saying about you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Well, this is about providing the water. So what I'm going to talk about really is getting books off library shelves, out of the door and into homes. And there's so many students who don't have ready access to books. So what we do in our libraries makes a real difference. I know that's true up in the far north, but I actually think there are homes all around the country that the libraries need to come into play in order to provide those resources. So Kathy spoke about taking a collaborative community approach to summer reading, and most of the elements in this diagram here also apply to the provision of resources, getting books into hands. The school library, the public library, and the National Library all have something to contribute. So we'll start with the school library. And it's the driving force, really, with the whole initiative, I think. It's at the heart of reading for pleasure in a school, and it can be both the spark and the substance for any home reading initiative. Library staff, and again, I'm making it sound like there's a whole team of you, when I know there's probably only one of you, and you're probably even only part-time as well. But the library staff are the people who really know the collection, and they know the students, and it's their heart's delight to make the connections between the two with their enthusiasm and expertise. School librarians can also be the key liaison person in a school between the school library and other libraries to maximise what's available to the school community. It's a really important role, and usually the school summer reading initiatives are actually driven from the library. So for those of you in a school library, what's the story at your school? Does your library issue books to all students and teachers for holiday reading? Back in the day, many schools requested all library books had to be returned early in term 4 for the massive stock take project. And after that job was done, then the books sat all tidy and undisturbed on the shelves over the summer until the first days of the new school year. But times have changed, and library automation has hugely simplified stock taking procedures. The books don't even actually will need to be returned. And also we've shifted away from a focus on not losing any books at all costs to being more concerned with making the most difference for student learning. Many schools, as has been mentioned, issue books to kids through the school year at the end of each term over the holidays. And if this happens, then it sort of becomes business as usual when it comes to summer rather than the exception. So your collection has been developed in the school with your students in mind, and it's a rich resource that isn't doing its job if for a month or two it's just sitting on the shelf unused. The thing is, there probably will be a few book losses, but that needs to be kept in perspective. So thinking about your school, if books are locked away over the summer, is that because there's resistance? Or is it apathy or lack of awareness or workload pressure or some other reason? Coming up, Amanda's going to talk a little bit about addressing some of these particular challenges. And Anne's mentioned a lot of the sort of strategies that you can use to set students up for holiday reading through the school library. But I'll just say that having focus class visits at the end of the year with a special discussion and promotion and explanation of holiday reading and reading loss, it's essential to help students choose books successfully that they want and have those strategies that they can do it independently through the summer. It might be a question of filling a book bag, bringing a bag, or getting one of those 25-cent brown paper bags from the supermarkets and filling them up with books. Family borrowing, swap a book, ebooks and audio. These are all things that the school library can actually do. Some public libraries are offering grab bags, which are just get this bag issued and it'll have a selection in there, and that might be something that you offer to parents where they can just choose a bag and have a sort of a lucky dip selection, or even to students. And again, putting the collateral together, if you have puzzles and simple reading logs where you put a star rating by something, thinking about what the library can do to actually drive it. And of course, issuing to teachers as well. So they can be important reading role models. They can talk to the kids what they're going to read over the summer and why they do. So that's the school library. Here at National Library Services to Schools, we are super keen to support schools with summer reading initiatives and promotions. And so we're offering a special summer reading loan on top of a school's normal allocation. All the information about this offer has been emailed to loan coordinators already, but if you haven't heard about it from them, then you might like to follow up with them about it, or you can get in touch with us. I've put a post on the Padlet with the contact details, and it's a really simple email process. Just going to be asked for your name of your school and contact details, and the sorts of books that you're wanting and how many, and the age range of your students. So really straightforward. The information is actually a bit tricky to find on our website. We've got so many pages, but I've put a link directly in the Padlet to it. And I've also put the 0800 number up here on the screen. So if you've got any questions, you can just actually ring that and someone will be able to help you. If issuing books from the school library is something that your school isn't going to do, isn't a possibility for whatever reason, National Libraries loan could be a fantastic option to use instead, or as well. So you might do both and see what you go. And I just want to say that we're absolutely okay with our National Library books being issued to students and going home. I expect there'll be some degree of anxiety about losing books with students moving schools, or books getting lost over the long holidays. But I can reassure you that we are completely understanding about this. There are no recriminations, no overdue or lost book charges. The books often end up turning up in the end. And if not, then hopefully they're out there being read by a child. So make a wee note now about tapping into this additional summer loan for your school. If you think it's something you could use for your students and your teachers, maybe request a loan of read aloud novels to give to your teachers, send them out. And the third sort of player in this summer reading offer is the public library, because they're really important partners in book provision and reading engagement for the whole community. And as Anne said, most public libraries offer some sort of special summer reading programs along with their regular services. And some of these are online, some of these face-to-face, some of them a mixture of both. And they often have a really fun range of activities and events and challenges and things to do. So this lovely sunny logo is from Palmerston North Library's summer reading program. There's a lot that the school can do to promote what the public library offers, liaising with the staff at the library, promoting what the library offers, being a catalyst for families to think about joining and using the public library if they don't already. And also in the new year, celebrating participation. So what happened and what was fun and what did you do? And I popped a post in the Padlet about some of the ideas for schools to help their students and families really connect with the public library. And as Kathy mentioned, promoting the public library summer reading offer and engaging children with it might actually be the main focus for what your school does, rather than creating a program of your own. And lastly, let's not forget book shopping. There might be some scope for highlighting ways your students could buy some books to add to their home library. Of course, it'll depend on your community and what's available locally. Some of you will be fortunate to live near a specialist children's bookshop, but all bookshops are full of lovely, shiny new offerings. Secondhand bookshops can be a real treasure trove too. This photo shows a family that comes into this secondhand bookshop each holidays, and the kids all stock up. Libraries often have weeded book sale table with books cheap as chips. There are books at op shops. Usually the children's books are 50 cents or $1. Look out for book fairs. Kerry's just had our Life Education Trust book fair, and the children's books were all $1 each. And think too about book swaps. I've mentioned book swaps happening in the school library, but maybe there's some little free libraries in the neighbourhood. Dunedin is full of them, and there might be other book swap opportunities. A lovely way to personalise secondhand books, or new books for that matter, is with a book plate. And in the Padlet, I've added a post about some downloadable book plates. And you might like to suggest to parents, if they're thinking about Christmas presents, that they can include a book or two. Just depends on what works in your community. As well as print books, there are options with ebooks, e-audio and stories online, such as Radio New Zealand. And I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Amanda, who will share some ideas for other ways to connect to stories and what to do when the times that we're living in make things a little bit more difficult. Over to you.
Thanks, Jeannie. So I'm going to be talking to you now about those challenges that can come up. Sometimes they're expected and sometimes they're unexpected. And we'll cover a few ways to look at them, but already you've heard from Anne and Jeannie and Kathy some really great ideas on how to overcome these. So let's have a quick look at some of those challenges. The first one is one that we've all been facing, and that of course is COVID shutdowns. And some of you may very well not even be in your own libraries yet, or in that very strange situation of being open and then having to close again and that kind of thing. Some schools are offering click and collect options with their libraries. My suggestion for that is to check with your senior management team to see how that fits with your school's approach to how they're dealing with the COVID restrictions that they're experiencing. If you would like to offer one, come up with a plan and just check it out with them. Some schools are using Google Forms for people to use and make requests. Others are simply emailing the school library directly, and some schools are putting it as a banner on their school website as to how to go about click and collect. So that's a possibility if while we're facing those kinds of challenges. The very big one that we're all facing right now, of course, is COVID. But there are other things that may very well be at the top of your mind or you're experiencing right now in your school. One of the ways that I like to think about situations and new opportunities is to use this compass, which is a thinking strategy from Harvard University Project Zero. So north is your needs. What do I need to understand about this opportunity? What's exciting about it in the east? What do I have that is my strengths in the south? And west covers your worries, or as we're calling them right now, challenges. So for summer reading, one of the biggest worries that my school management had when I first broached the whole idea of summer reading with them was, will the books even come back? And that was a very valid question. So what I did was I figured out some of the ways that I could mitigate the problem of books coming back and came up with some solutions. So in amongst all the worries that you've got, you might want to write them down, or as you go, hearing from others, write down their worries. But what I found, if I do this sort of thinking exercise, is that the strengths and the needs can actually mitigate those worries quite well. So one of the strengths you're experiencing right now is hearing about the why and the how of doing summer reading from Kathy and Anne and Jeannie, all their great ideas. Some of the other strengths that you might have is a really great PTA that are very good at communicating and getting community support along. Another strength might be your newsletter and what a great method of communication it is for your school community. Write all those wonderful things down. Some of the things might be occurring to you right now about your needs. Helpers are a great thing to have to get this working. It can be a little bit of extra work for you. So think about needs. I always like to add the way for children to bring books home, which was having bags. And the thing that actually gives you energy and keeps you driving this whole project is, of course, the excitement. And one of the wonderful things about having a summer reading program is the huge positive impact that it has on reading. So thinking about all of those things together might be a really good way to overcome those challenges. Just to move on, just a reminder that you don't have to do the summer reading program all on your own. And if your school is very reluctant, just kick in and encourage students to connect with the summer reading initiatives that are going on in their community already. You've already heard us talking about public libraries, and here are some great examples of ones that happened last year in Hamilton and in Hastings. And of course, Read New Zealand Online has their reading challenge. And we've just heard that the Auckland Public Libraries are doing their Level Up program and extending it from ages 5 through to 12 and then through to teens. And they're using a mixture of apps and online activities as well as in person. So have a look at those websites and connect your students in with those. The other thing to remember too is that audiobooks are a really wonderful way of connecting people with books. And if you've already got a Wheelers platform, remind your school community that it's available. Lots of public libraries have audiobook options that families can use their library cards to access. And Radio New Zealand has marvellous podcasts of story times, and Jenny's already put a link to that in the Padlet. And then, of course, if all of those challenges can't be met by your clever thinking, don't forget we're here to help. So just call or email the School Library Advice Line, contact us or your facilitator directly. We can offer a sympathetic ear as we listen to the things that are holding you back or frustrating you, and then we can offer some solutions and work with you to overcome those challenges. Now I want to hand back to Anne, and she can address some other issues. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Yes, we've raced through, and I see that we've just got 5 minutes left, although I think we're quite happy to just hang on a little bit longer if everybody else wants us to. But just reminding everybody, first of all, about the Padlet, which is a great resource. It's got some fantastic tips in there. Amanda was just talking about the fear that books won't get returned. And I noticed that there's already a couple of great ideas in the Padlet about how you can help mitigate that. So there's some really, really great stuff in there. And we just wanted to remind you that coming up next, all you need to do today is take away one idea or look at one thing on the Padlet. We'll be sending out the follow-up notes, and there is just so much that we can help you with if you want us to give you some one-on-one help. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and double check whether or not there's any questions from anybody coming through. Megan, have you had any questions come through yet?
There's no questions in the Q&A yet, but I'm keeping an eye on that and also in the chat.
Cool. I do know the other thing to remind everybody about is I saw an email in my inbox just before we started on this webinar that their reading team that put together the loans are getting very up to date. So if you wanted to put in a loan for your summer reading, that doesn't have to be back until next year. So you would not have to get that back, I think, until April. So that's a really cool time for you to have that extra reading in your school. The turnaround is now quite quick, so you would be getting those books within a couple of weeks, absolutely. Now, if there are no other questions, and there doesn't look like there have been, I just wanted to thank you all for coming along today. It's been really great putting this together for you, and I would just like to finish off with our karakia. Kia irihia te kiri kōrero ki te tāhuhu o te whare. Kia wātia nā tamaha o tēnei hui. Kia wairia nā tapu o tēnei whananga. Tuturu whakamaua kia tēnā tēnei. Homie huia taiki. Thank you very much, everybody, for popping along. And here are some of the different ways that you can get in touch with us. Thank you very much, Rox. And I know you'll probably have something happening up there in the far north for the public libraries and the schools to engage with. I do know that Whangarei has also been in touch, as well as a lot of other people. As I say, if you need any help, just get in touch with our 0800 line and we can pop you in touch with your local facilitator. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. Ka kite anō.
Ka kite. All right, when I click end, it's going to kick everyone out. So prepare that for that. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye. We've got a few more messages coming through. But
thanks,
yeah,
Chris.
all right.
I think I know which one, Chris, that is.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.